Okay. All right, we can start the meeting now. Apologize for our delay in a start, technical difficulty. Okay. We had open session call to order. We had our closed session. Now we are returning back to open session. Welcome, everyone. I will ask our student representative, Ms. Kaya Cotero, to lead us on a pledge of allegiance.
Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Cotero. And item number 6, adoption of the agenda.
So moved. Seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7, report of closed session actions. We have no item to report from closed session item today. 8, staff presentation and information. 8.1, introduction of student representative to the board, first quarter 2021, and report by student representative. I want to make a note that tonight is the first night that we have our student representative. In the past, student representatives would tell us what's going on at their school, which we greatly appreciate. But I think that it will be more fun, more interesting, and it would be nice if our student representative is more involved with our district business and issues, so to have a better understanding of what it's like to sit on the Board of Education. So our board has agreed to have the student make a non-counting vote on all issues that the board will vote on from now on. My goal is to have the student get a more in-depth experience of governance and decision-making. Dr. Egan, would you like to introduce our student representative?
I would love to. Thank you, Mrs. Liu. Good evening, members of the board. I'd like to introduce Kayana, also known as Kaya Cotero, who is a junior who represents the student body at North High School as their ASB president. Kaya is a student athlete who serves as the track team captain and also volunteers with CSF, Hunger Awareness Club, and the National Honor Society. Kaya was raised in Gardena with her parents, 3 sisters, and 2 cats. Kaya's leadership is driven by her passion for fostering a sense of community among her peers, as well as unity and inclusion. These are the leadership traits that she's working to instill with her peers at North High School. Kaya has adopted an altruistic mindset that is implemented in every aspect of her life. She's passionate about her school community and relationships with peers. In addition to her work as ASB president, Kaya is currently an active participant in 5 service clubs and 2 cultural clubs. Moreover, as a junior, she is enrolled in 3 AP courses, and she excels at all of those. So with that, I'd like to introduce Kaya and ask that she share a little bit of what's going on at the high school across our district.
Thank you, Dr. Egan. So the TUSD high schools collectively agree the beginning of the year made students both nervous and excited. There was general excitement exuding from each student, but because there were so many people, it was chaotic. The social aspect is definitely something everyone loved, and general participation in events increased overall. Students have begun to acclimate back to full-time schedules and constantly interact with others. It feels like class participation across all boards has dramatically increased. We all note that the energy in our stands at rallies, home games, especially football games, and classes is extremely spirited. Many of us are looking hopefully towards our homecoming. South theme being Wizard of Oz, West themes being A Night in Paris, Torrance being the Enchanted Garden, and North being Tangled in the Night. The most common issue I've heard from all schools are that student gatherings outside of the classroom are challenging in light of the COVID protocols. This has been especially difficult for club meetings and planning large-scale gatherings like homecoming rallies and assemblies. We hope that now we've been back to school for almost a month, that those issues will be resolved soon.
Thank you for your report. Any comments from the board? Okay, move on.
Welcome.
Huh?
Welcome. We're looking forward to hearing all the updates from you and also having you participate in votes and understanding how students are perceiving the decisions that are made by the board as well. So we hope that you'll speak up, and if there are things that you do want us to take into consideration, that you feel that this is a safe space for you to be able to share those sentiments as well.
Thank you.
Great. Anybody else? I think we all feel the same way. What she said. All right, 8.2, report from the Torrance Council of PTA. We have our TCPTA President Terry Reagans and former school board member. Welcome, Ms. Reagans.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, board, cabinet, and community members. It's nice to be here wearing a different hat than I've been here previously. I am wearing the hat of being the Torrance Council of PTA's president this year. And I can tell you that PTA is alive and well in Torrance. And they are beginning to get back to their usual things, back on campus, back working with students, back fundraising, all of the good stuff that PTAs have done previously. I do want to tell you in particular about the things that Torrance Council has been doing. And just for your information, in Torrance, there's 30 schools, 31 schools, but 30 schools with PTAs. And each of those PTAs are subsumed under the Torrance Council of PTAs. So we are sort of the oversight organization. So we have contact with every one of our school PTAs, and they're wonderful people. And all of the projects that Torrance Council does are also projects that each of our schools are participating in and helping with. So those that we have started with already this year, the first one was this summer when we packed about 400 backpacks. Mrs. Lou was there with us one of the days and helped us provide supplies especially for our foster and homeless students for Project BOSS is what we call it, which is bringing our students school supplies. So those packs were then delivered to those students. Actually, they came and picked them up and got to select the backpack they wanted. And they started the school, at least at the beginning, school supply set. And then school started. And as we talked about last time when I was here, membership campaigns began again at every one of our 30 schools. And they're working hard to get all of the parents to remember PTA is here and to get motivated to be involved with their students. We are not doing a lot of things on campus yet, as has been the request of Torrance Unified, but we are working within the guidelines that we've been given and trying to be active wherever we are. But one thing I wanted to mention to you folks today on the school board is there is a new award that is being offered by the California PTA, which is actually our parent organization. They have challenged PTA councils in particular to get 100% of their school board to be part of their PTA in town. Now, you would think that would be sort of a normal kind of a thing, but apparently that's kind of unusual and difficult to do. So I challenge each of you to join PTA, doesn't matter where, as long as it's somewhere in Torrance Council, and to help us to achieve that award. And I will kind of be watching that and reminding you perhaps along the way, you will be receiving a letter with contact information as to how to do that online. So I hope you will participate. So as membership continues, we are starting Adventures in Art projects, which is something we were only able to do completely virtually last year. But now they're able to have a parent in the classroom and do some art education, which I think our students really were missing out on. That has just the first project is being presented in the next week or so. And again, we're being very careful to have single individuals in the classroom following all the guidelines, but still providing that art experience for our students. I mentioned Project Boss, which is bringing our students school supplies. We also have Project Hope, which is helping our people everywhere. And again, that applies mostly to our foster and homeless youth, of which there are at any given time several hundred on our roster, that need to have certain things brought to them that they do not have available through their own environment. And the reason I mention that is there is a current drive to collect Halloween costumes for those students. Something we couldn't do last year because we couldn't be present on campus at all. And as we all know, Halloween was canceled last year, whether it was actually canceled or not. I do believe it will be a very active sort of a holiday this year. So we have a list of those that are needed. And if you're interested, I can provide you with that so that you can select whatever kind of costume you'd like to bring to a student, 1, 2, however many you'd like, or if you'd rather, you can just donate funds and we can purchase those needed items for you. So I hope you will participate in that if you can. PTAs are thinking about meeting in person, finally, for a change. In fact, I've personally seen them at several locations around town, not on school campuses again. We've been asked not to meet on school campuses for now, but we'll be sort of moving that direction, we hope, as things improve. And PTAs really do want to meet with each other and become part of the school campus again. So the bottom line is PTAs are hoping, really hoping, to make a difference this year. They were still viable last year, but very much less visible. This year they will be around, and you probably will be hearing from them and hopefully seeing evidence of what they're doing. But they're hoping to be part of things and bring parents and the school community back on board and help to make it feel more cohesive and like we're all working together for the kids. So I hope to hear from you all. And if you have any questions about anything I said, I think you all know how to contact me. So please do. Okay, any questions from anyone at this point?
Yes, Mrs. Reagan,
Yes.
thank you for telling us what's going on with Torrance Council PTA. I definitely enjoyed helping with Project Boss, bring back our school supplies earlier this year, a month or two ago now. And I just want to say it is just amazing how much you guys do to be in that supply room. There's so many donations from very kind community members and organizations and businesses. And I know that you guys, I saw firsthand how many hundreds of hours you guys put in that program. So thank you. It was really fun. Actually, it was really funny. The backpacks were really cool.
Yes.
They had great, good designs. And for elementary school, there was even a Spider-Man, a licensed backpack. So that was really great. Thank you.
Yes. And I was able to be there on the day when the students actually came and picked up, and the excitement that they had was really palpable. In fact, we had perhaps more high school students come and select their own backpacks this year than we've had previously. So by the end of the day, all the high school packs essentially were gone, and there were still some elementaries that had not been claimed. But the high school students in particular seemed really excited about getting back to school.
That is wonderful. Any extra Spider-Man backpack? I'll take. Just kidding.
There was
But,
Batman too that had wings. All right.
I was a membership chair, and I am more than happy to have to enroll in even more. But I already am a member this school year, as I am with every year, to several schools. I was also a ventures and art docent, and I was just wondering what their next project is.
Oh, gosh, what
that
did
you're
they
saying
say? One of the things that to keep in mind is they did have a virtual program of this last year, and some of the projects were released, but not fully participated in by the students. So they actually have a project or two sort of in arrears from last year that they will be starting with. And one of them has to do with making a wooden shelving unit, essentially. So they'll be working on that. And then moving on to the new projects. There will be 1 or 2 fewer projects this year because of the limitations. But again, we're getting back into it as much as we can.
Thank you so much for continuing to do what you guys can and following the safety protocols.
Thank you.
Vice President Han?
Just a quick question, Mrs. Reagan.
Yes.
Is there a reason, is it a district policy that the PTA can't meet on the campuses, or is it the PTAs are just not deciding to meet on campus?
I think it's just trying to eliminate extra individuals from campus that are not essential to be there. And we can have meetings in another location that is just as effective to have the meeting there and not have to in any way contaminate or expose the campus to those extra individuals. We have not taken it upon ourselves to check vaccinations and be essential, whereas when they go to campus, they do have to do that. But there's a little more freedom to have it off campus. And we're working towards that, right, Dr. Stowe?
Yeah, just like any organization, they can fill out the proper paperwork through Dr. Butler's office and insurance and those kinds of things. So it's not a prohibition, but I think it does allow for a little more flexibility on the part of the PTA to have meetings still either at someone's house or remotely. I know many of them are still meeting on Zoom.
Yes.
That's what I want to make sure what we can do, support you guys. That's why I wanted to make sure if it was something on our side, we can help, let us know. We wanted to.
Well, I have
Sure.
to tell you that next week, in fact, well, actually, October 6th, we had planned and had gotten clearance in the last year to be able to use a performing arts center for a large meeting. We often have 2 or 3 times a year, we have large meetings of 150 people, 200 people. And we had arranged to do that at one of the performing arts centers. PTA has decided not to do that because we don't feel that we want to have, again, that many extra additional people on campus, even though it's at a campus where you don't actually enter campus, but that we are going to hold off for a little while longer. And I don't think it's going to be much longer until we'll have more free access. So I'm not feeling too bad about that.
Dr. Gerson?
Thank you for being here, Mrs. Reagans, and for your report. First, happy to report that I'm a member of more than
Yay.
one unit, obviously with my children at different schools. So thank you. Also, I wanted to thank you for allowing your PTA units to continue to use video conferencing. I know it's allowed more parents to participate, just like we've seen in our board meetings by having Zoom also available. So thank you for that.
Oh, yes. Actually, in fact, the California State PTA had to change the legal bylaws of each PTA in order to allow for that because it was not previously in the bylaws. So now that is a permanent aspect of the bylaws when they are updated and changed. So yeah, that's a really good thing. It is tricky to do this though. I just want y'all to know that we've tried to figure out how to be in person as well as be on Zoom at the same time. And it's not an easy endeavor. So Gil, you're doing a great job making it happen. So. Okay, is that it?
Thank you, Mrs.
All right,
Reagan.
see you next month. If you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you. Item 8.3, Superintendents Report.
Thank you, President Liu and board members. Good to see all of you here tonight in person. And just as we've been meeting in person, obviously schools are in session, and I've continued to have the pleasure of visiting a number of elementary schools so far. My first middle school visit, official visit is tomorrow, and I look forward to that. And just pleased to report that everything's going so well. Our site administrators, our teachers, counselors, classified staff, I mean, everybody is doing everything that they can to make it happen. It's a lot of extra work, and it's worth it from everything that we're hearing from, not just the staff but parents and students. I do want to let the board and the community know that we still face some challenges. just as every other sector in the country is, with things like supply chain and logistics and construction projects. We've had delays and people pull out of contracts that they had originally agreed to, and so the fact that we're still here and not in our boardroom is another example of just some things that we're dealing with. In fact, one of the schools I visited recently, the cafeteria manager, I had spoke to a group of principals and had talked about some of the food shortages and lack of supply that we are receiving. And one of the principals went and checked with his cafeteria manager, and the principal had no idea that the cafeteria manager was just making it work. And she just was doing everything that she could to make sure all the students got fed, and because we are seeing about a 50% increase in the number of meals served this year. And so not just are there logistics issues and we're getting shorted product, we also know that there are more students eating. And so it kind of explains some of the lines that people are experiencing a little bit. I was at North High today, and they were doing a nice job of moving through the cafeteria in pretty timely fashion. So I know it's a lot of work on a lot of people's part, and I thank them for that, and thank the students for their patience and understanding in what we're dealing with as well. The middle and high school wellness centers are starting to gain popularity with students. Casimir reported that they had 48 students there in one day come by. And so there are individual and group activities or just, a place for students to quietly work on things or listen to music or read books. And so I encourage parents to have their kids go check that out if they need some place to go. Just to try to unplug a little bit. I would like to recognize and congratulate Dr. Ferris for doing a great job of putting together our classified staff development program the last Thursday and Friday. We had 17 different sessions that classified staff could attend. These are mostly our clerical and support staff for CSCA Local 19. But of the 17 sessions, most of them had at least 24 people. I know Bonnie Moss and I did a session on customer service that was very well attended, and Dr. Ferris did one on Friday morning. I think there were 58 people in there, if I remember. So he had double the number I had. So it's just Dr. Butler did a session. I know Jerry Lynn Mock did a session. So a lot of people pitched in. We also had Schools First, our partner on that side, who did sessions for employees on 403Bs and retirement savings, and talked to our classified staff about how to take advantage of the summer saver and some other things. So it was a wide range of things. Gil ran some sessions on Power School, and just it was a team effort. And so those sessions are recorded for our classified staff that were not able to attend, so they can watch those, and there's all the documentation. So just it was a glimpse of things to come for our classified staff as we think about developing them as well. And then finally, we were noticed today, Dr. Egan and I, from Jamie Jimenez over at Sherry, that Sherry was recognized this weekend as a model continuation school. And they were also identified with an award for having an exemplary intervention program. So congratulations to Sherry. That award came through the California Continuing Education Association. So that is my brief report for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stowe, for your report. Item 8.4, 2021 map growth. Dr. Crumpy?
Yes, thank you. Good evening. So tonight's presentation fulfills the CDE, the California Department of Ed requirement to report the scores for the assessment that we gave as an alternative to the CASP test last spring. And I guess I can't see what slide they're on, so I hope we don't have the screen up. So the first slide shows how we did as a district in ELA and in mathematics by grade level last year. We utilize the guided reading level for English language arts for grades 3, 4, and 5. And we utilize the NWEA MAP assessment in grades 6 through 8 and 11, and for all grades in mathematics. Scores are reported in one of 4 categories: either not met, nearly met, met, or exceeding the standards. So those are what the 4 different scores that we get for our students. Overall, you can see by looking at the slide that we held our own during the pandemic. And this is a sneak peek slide that I actually showed you in July. We had just received the early overall data at that point. Next slide. You know, when we look at the next set of slides, the data by school site, we see trends similar to what the nationwide research has reported. Slight decreases, if any, in English language arts, but larger gaps or decreases in mathematics. They also report that the math gaps in learning may take longer to catch up. So that definitely is an area of focus that we're seeing and everybody else throughout the county, state, and nation. Moving on then to the slide with the demographics. We actually see very similar data looking at our scores by ethnicity. Meeting or exceeding in English language arts with more nearly mets in mathematics. So very much mirroring our grade level and our district-wide data. And then the next slide is where we see our lowest scores is with our students who are in certain programs. And with a lot of not meeting the standards. And I'm going to talk about that a little more in a minute. Lastly, data-wide, and not to compare, you know, 2 different tests that do not relate to one another, but just to look at something. So what I've showed you prior or in the earlier slides is just our results in the spring map or the guided reading level, you know, data and how well we did. So what does that all kind of maybe look like? And so when we looked at how did we do in CASP 2 years ago? And so you can see here are the percent meeting or exceeding. So it's those 2 categories of scores put together, and our percent in 2019, you can see, and then where we were in our alternative assessments last May. And we see a decrease in English language arts of 3%. And like we could kind of predict, a larger negative 5.5% in mathematics. So that's overall as a district. Gil, if you go back 1 slide for just a minute though. So here's what's interesting. And I think actually Mr. Hahn asked a question in the July meeting when we kind of summed up how many were meeting or exceeding and how not, because we kind of looked and said we didn't seem like at that point that we were losing ground. But we didn't know the demographics. We didn't know some of our subgroups. And we said, are we really seeing that we didn't see, you know, a lot of learning loss that happened? And we said, we don't know. And what we needed to do is to see this disaggregated. And there's a couple of interesting things. Now, you may remember that we do these things called 15-minute meetings, and we bring our principals in a few times a year, and they're looking at specific subgroups of data. And we have really been looking at our foster youth, our homeless youth, and our socioeconomically disadvantaged students. Those are 3 areas where we do see, and it mirrors here, our lowest scores. So although low, what I do want to report is that these groups held their own or actually grew. And so our foster youth actually held their ground, and there was no change from where they were a couple of years ago. Our homeless and our low socioeconomically disadvantaged students actually grew in their English language arts by 6%. A little bit less than that in math, but they actually went down a little bit, but they went down less than we did as a district. Our African-American students, that group, remember the African-American group, especially the low-income students, has been a group that we've really been focusing on and I know that's a slide back and we don't need to back up, also went up 6%. So I think we have a growth that we need to make. We know that we lost some ground during the pandemic, but I think that the work that our teachers and our administrators and everybody in the district has done has really been to work very hard to keep those kids that we knew we might lose and to keep them engaged and connected in school. So where in July, when we didn't have any of this data disaggregated, we didn't know. They did work very hard, and while they're still not meeting the standards, and we need to raise those scores, they didn't lose more ground. And so I think that was is a little bit a bright side of them coming out of that. So what does all this mean next steps? Because that was last May. It's a test that we use as an alternative exam that you know, and so it's kind of done and over. So now what? Our elementary teachers are very busy right now in their last weeks of giving their initial assessments in both English language arts and math. So they'll be able to compare how the kids did, you know, last May to where their students that they are getting to know how well they're doing right now. In fact, many of them even did some of the youngers, brought them in and did these assessments before the start of school. They used some of our AB 86 and our ESSER monies to bring kids in so they could get, especially the kids that they knew might be struggling from what their teacher reported the year before. And they brought them in. And so on day one, they were actually starting some of the interventions for them. You notice the guided reading levels. I talk about those all the time. You know, that's a thing that we have done in this district since, gosh, for 25 years. What we have not really ever used very well is a math diagnostic and a screener. And it's something that has showed up in our LCAP feedback. And so we were actually able to purchase something called iReady. It's brand new. So we're looking forward to hearing what the teachers say about how well that screens and gives us some diagnostic information for the students moving forward. In middle and high school, and some of them are using the iReady, but they are already using their common formative assessments, and in fact have already started the intervention. So one of the things that they really did work on was not waiting until the fall and to getting to know each other. And they did spend time this summer trying to be ready to meet these kids and get them re-engaged in school and getting to know them very well. So we didn't have another month of a delay. Just kind of reminding you about some of our goal 6. That's where we put our AB 86, which is the money for this year, and then ESSER 3. We hope that we continue the support for next year. Every school received 300 hours of additional teacher pay to be able to do tutoring and intervention before or after school, so extending the school day, as well as money and supports during the school day. Just as these are reminders, but every single elementary school got an additional intervention teacher to be ready to help and support these kiddos. One of the things that I think during the day support, our math resource team, again, preparing ahead of time that we knew that math was going to be more of a struggle. They've actually gone through and they've aligned all of our units in mathematics. Jeremy's going to ask me for this later, right, Mr. Gerson? But they've taken the standards and the learning targets, and they've determined what was like a foundational pre-skill needed for that standard. So if they are determining that kids are not ready knowing that standard, those resources are linked there for them, so they don't have to hunt and find what some of those foundational skills are. So we're hoping, and I can send it to you. This is not a live link presentation, so I was trying to link and let you see what it looks like. We weren't able to do that this evening, but but it really sends a nice message that we aren't starting behind. They're this year's standards of where our kids need, but we're weaving in the skill level of things that they may have missed last year. If we go back and say, oh gosh, they're 6 months behind, they're going to forever get behind. We aren't doing that. We're starting off with what they have to learn now. And then we're feeding in information of that and instruction where kids might be lacking. And then finally, there is a new LCAP that's required, and it's a mid-year LCAP this year. It's really because of the concentration funds that were given in addition to the concentration funds, the additional funding for those school districts, but they thought it would be a great idea for all schools to have to do a mid-year LCAP. And so with that, there is a requirement for a data analysis. So we've been working with the schools to make sure it's not something else and something different, but we can use but we're using the tools that we use. And so we will be coming to you at the beginning of second semester with that midterm report and update, and hope to be able to kind of analyze and give you more information on how we're doing instructionally.
Thank you very much, Dr. Crumpy. Does anybody have any questions? Dr. Mohammed?
Thank you so much, Dr. Crumpy. I just would like to go to slide 8, where you kind of talked about the subgroups. And I know the slide kind of talks a lot about not met, but as you mentioned that, there's a lot of growth in these categories. And so I appreciate the work that's being done. And I just want to kind of follow up on some of the things that, were there any kind of aha moments from these assessments that would at least tell us whether some of the strategies that we have in place are working? If not, what are some of the things that we can tweak or make any adjustments to as we kind of move forward? Because it's great to see that the gaps are closing, because that's really what we want. But how do we keep validating our strategies to determine whether or not they're being effective?
No, that's a good question. I would say that I'm not sure that this specific assessment and the how we gave it is the best indicator. So that's why we're really focusing now on the teachers who have the kids in front of them right now and using that data and using that as more of an instructional decision. Remember, we had students all over the district taking these assessments. Remember, when we had them, either they were in a blended or a distance program, and then we let them switch when we opened, and some of them moved and changed teachers. And so, and we also didn't get the percent that took this assessment. We had some just kind of say, I'm distance learning, I'm not doing this. And so they were administering it from home versus in person. And so the validity of this isn't something that we're strongly focusing on, because we really value the work that our teachers are doing currently in the class more formatively. I think that to answer your question, I mean, we're constantly doing that of what it is, but we have to look at it by the student. I'm giving it to you as a group right now and saying, here's a group and here's how they did. But in the classroom, they're looking at it. We look at how they're doing by the standard and by the student. And so I think when you individualize it for those kids, we work really hard at saying, well, it's not that we gave an assessment and 75% of the students did well, so we're moving on. Well, but who are those 25%? And if it's the same 25% every single time, or if it's a specific subgroup, that isn't good enough. And so they're doing that kind of a deep dive into the data so that they can personalize and individualize.
And it's good to know that they're doing that deep dive, because sometimes we don't see that. We see a collective group here. So that is nice to know that. And it's that, at the student level that these intervention or these strategies are taking place. So thank you for that.
Great. Any other comments or questions? Dr. Han? Vice President Han? Oh, yes, Ms. Kotera.
Okay. So I had a question regarding the extended day support. What exactly would that entail?
So depending on the school site, we didn't micromanage it at the district level. Instead, what we did is we call it kind of pass through, is we provided the funding to the schools. So every school got 300 hours. And so it may be that there's before school tutoring, after school tutoring, so that teachers can go in and do tutoring in the library after school. But it also may be for some specific groups that are like intervention groups. So kids may be invited in to do a specific dive into something that they may need. So they may stay after school and be invited into a specific class because they're struggling in their math class, for example.
So what about, would there be an alternative solution for kids who can't come to school before it starts and like
Yes.
they're busy after school?
And you have hit on why, like, we're doing this because we're trying to do whatever it is and whatever it takes. And that's why your school has Saxon time. Is that what you call it? Everyone has, and so that's where the Saxon time is, because she asked a really smart question here. Because often when you do before and after school interventions, you don't get the right kids. And so that Saxon time becomes critical. So the teachers are tapping you into those classes so that you can get the support, because that's really the only time we can guarantee that we're providing additional support for you is during your Saxon time.
Thank you.
Great question.
Thank you.
I know we've had discussions previously about data-driven decision-making and the utility of the data that we are collecting and using and comparing across years and like disaggregating. I was curious, I know for this particular presentation that you mentioned, you qualified that this is required and this maybe is not the most useful, like getting the information that that we're curious about with terms of how the breakdowns in terms of grades or based on demographics. But I was curious, as a district, what are we doing to try to improve the ability to make decisions that are informed by data, and how is that being implemented across our school sites and systemically, just sort of longitudinally, how are we sort of trying to figure out how to compare throughout the student's time in TUSD?
Right. So two things. And one of them is, the answer is through our professional learning communities. And so we take great pride in the work that our schools are doing and the conversations they're having, so that they're growing their collective teacher efficacy as a team. And so they're doing that individually by grade level or by subject level, by looking at those kids by the student, by the standard. So how are they doing that and tracking that progress? It is by the student, by the standard. And so that is the work. It was very encouraging. So part of that is also professional development, and throughout our LCAP, in fact, it's in goal 1.1, 2.1, and 3.1. Are trainings that we give to both our teachers, but also our administrators. And so one of the things that we're working on right now is that, and so that data piece is that you asked about, how do we know, is exactly what many of our schools have asked for. So we are differentiating that training for them, and we're going to be bringing them additional training so that they can decide. Is it their leadership teams? Is it their PLC leads? A couple of our schools said we need the entire staff to kind of have a reset and refocus after the pandemic. And so there's going to be professional development and training so that this can be, an emphasis. Also, and not, I wasn't rolling this out, but the state is rolling out a new longitudinal data tracking. I am happy to bring the information, although it's old. And so it's from 2019. And so I'm not like the validity of looking at things that are that old, I'm not sure, and we won't get a new score for this for 2 more years. So there is something that is going to be, that we will have as a tool in 2 more years, that we will be able to longitudinally see how our students are doing, progressing through each of the standards. So there is a tool that, unfortunately, the interruption with CASP and the pandemic has slowed that piece down a little bit, but it is encouraging, and it's more information that we will have.
Thank you.
So,
Vice
thank,
President
Dr. Cummings, thank you so much for the presentation. Again, I think that it reaffirmed to me again what we went through during the pandemic itself. And so again, this is the reason why one of the main things I decided was to fight to have in person all throughout. I knew all along that obviously, no matter how good our teachers are, it's a challenge. There's a new challenge itself. And so one question I have though, is I saw the middle school not met. A lot of the middle schools did not meet standards on math, right? We saw like Madrona, Hull, some of these schools did not meet standards. So I don't know. And the reason why I'm asking this question is because last year, the most D's and F's that we saw were in 6th grade and 9th grade. That was, we saw. And so that's why I'm not surprised by the data. Because we were informed since that time that the most D's and F's were in 6th grade and 9th grade. And so that's my biggest concern right now is how are we addressing those 6th graders and 9th graders? So just a couple of thoughts I have regarding this. Number one is, one thing that's highlighted for me with 6th grade and 9th grade is the social mental health well-being of these students. It's not by accident that kids that went from elementary to middle school have the most D's and F's. It's not accident that kids that went from 8th grade middle school to high school have the most D's and F's. That transition is huge. And I think that one thing that has come to my mind, 2 days ago, I went to UCLA to visit some freshmen that we dropped off my dear friend's kids at UCLA. And I thought they would be excited, but they were traumatized. They were just overwhelmed. One kid came from a small private school of about 50, 40 kids in their graduating class, 30 kids. Now they come to a school of 1,200. Another kid did distance learning for 2 years, was not even in school. And they're now coming to a campus. And one kid literally said, I can't wait to go home today. She came home today, just to kind of reorient herself again. So that made me question about how did our 6th graders this year, or even our 7th graders adjust, or 9th grader and 10th grader adjust coming back? I think that's something that we need to figure out, find out. I'll be kind of curious. I think my experience on this past Friday made me think about the social mental well-being of these. That's why I love the Welcome Center. I think that's huge, it helps help. But is there any way that we can figure how that is? How are they doing? How do we measure the social mental well-being of these students? And I think again, and how do we onboard these 6th and 8th graders, 9th grade, 9th graders and 6th graders to their new environments? I know that we have like orientation, but even after orientation, like do we follow up with these students to say, how is it going? How is the transition? How is the, if we can figure that out, I think it's important to me. I think that this data, one thing I take away from the data was the 6th and 9th graders, right? The most D's and F's, and obviously, I don't know what the high school looks like, but when I saw the middle schools not being met, not met, I think we need to figure that out as well. So I don't know how we assess that, but I think that we really need to start thinking about, because these kids are now behind a little bit. And so, like you said, we're not going to put them 6 months behind. We're going to just add what they need, knowing how they're going to assess them right now. But how do we support them now? Like, I think that's my ultimate question now. So the 6th to 7th graders today, as well as the 9th and 10th graders today, how do we follow up and how do we make sure that they're doing okay? That's my ultimate question right now.
You raise a very good question, and I see Dr. Egan taking notes feverishly over there, and so we'll circle up and I mean, it's something that that I know you and I, having 9th graders and 10th graders, that we're probably seeing firsthand. But how is that affecting all students? You're right on. So we'll get some more information and bring that back to you. I'm sure it's something that the high school principals, middle school principals, and APs are already looking at, but thank you for the question.
Any further questions or comments? Great, thank you, Dr. Crumpy. Item number 9, oral communications on unscheduled hearings. The Board of Education welcomes input from the public. Speakers wishing to address the board on non-agenda topics have completed the appropriate submission form on the district website. Time allotted for public comments on non-agenda items is limited to 3 minutes per comment and for a total of 30 minutes. A speaker may not relinquish his or her time to another. I received 1 speaker card tonight, and will Mr. Brian Trachian please come up. Welcome to our school board. And thank you also for all your emails.
Good evening. Well, that's the first thank you I've got for those emails. Happy 553 days to slow the spread, everybody. Hope everybody's enjoyed losing their freedoms, their family and everything this past 18 months. I'm a third generation South Bay and Torrance resident. I've been employed by the district for over 20 years. And, you know, for the past 18 months, I'm here to tell you, you know, my two girls have been greatly affected by the policies of not only the state and the Department of Public Health, but the district as a whole. I have two girls at Fern, and they've suffered mentally and psychologically from all this, not being able to do anything they want to do, not be able to do what they love to do. I've seen, you know, I've always heard for 20 years since I've been here that, you know, the district and the board is always supposed to work for the, for our kids and do what's best for the kids. That was in fact me that sent emails for well over a month to everybody. And I sent papers by scientists and physicians all over the world talking about masks on kids. And I received no emails, no sympathy, no nothing. I received one email from one person and one of our administrators, and that email, all that was said was that I was being blocked. So that was it. I received nothing else from anybody else. You know, at what point after 18 months is anybody gonna start fighting back? You know, I'm one person and I'm shocked at how normal this is to everybody at this point. You know, we're in a county, we're in a state, we're governed by a LA Department of Public Health, but as parents, we're sick of hearing that it's just because of the LA Department of Public Health. You know, obesity's up, suicide's up, drug use is up, alcohol is up, alcoholism is up, and that's adults, teenagers, and adolescents alike. That's across the board. We don't have any mandates in our life except wearing a mask and having our kids wear a mask in class. Has anybody up there been in a 90-degree classroom upstairs with no air conditioning for 6.5 hours wearing a mask? Has anybody done that yet? I didn't think so. We're one of the only countries in the entire world that are still masking kids age 2 and up and telling kids 5 and up to wear masks in class.
Thank you, Mr. Turpian.
Okay. It's time to take care of the entire person, not just.
Got it. Item number 10, discussion and action items. Chief Mar, are there any requests for orals on the agendized items?
There are none.
Thank you. Item 10.2, approve provisional internship permit for qualified applicants. Dr. Ferris?
Yes, so the Commission on Teacher Credentialing governs all of the credentialing requirements for teachers teaching all types of subjects. And we do have a number of positions that are hard to fill positions. And fortunately, we're granted the ability to support teachers who are in a process or a stage of acquiring their credentials. And so we partner with different universities for internship opportunities. And this particular approval is for an internship for North High School for one of our paraeducators who is going to become a full-fledged special education teacher. And so with your approval, we'll be able to apply for this internship.
Thank you, Dr. Ferris. Are there any questions or comments about this agenda item to Dr. Ferris? If not, I can entertain a motion.
I've been in this person's classroom. I will motion that we accept.
Second.
Any further discussions? Actually, no discussions. Do
Roll call.
we need roll call?
No,
No, we
Not
don't.
you're
right?
in person, so you can just do a regular
I
vote.
thought you were going to let
Sorry, just-
student go first.
I did have a question. So I
Oh,
know
sure.
that I didn't realize this was for one person specifically. So this is setting a precedent for future individuals, or is it just for this individual?
So we will bring these each time there is one that we are approving. So you have approved several in the past that were processed over summertime, but this one is specifically for a single application.
Okay, thank you for clarification.
There is a motion and a second, and all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 10.3, approval of revised annual declaration of need for fully qualified educators. Dr. Ferris?
Yeah, so this is a related item. So each year, as I mentioned, we will apply for various waivers or temporary permits to help process individuals that we're employing. These include people who are acquiring a new authorization for a subject area. It includes our interns that I previously mentioned. For an example would be when we hire somebody from out of state and they're transitioning their credential, we'll have to get them a temporary authorization while they're acquiring things like their English learner authorization, which is a California specific requirement. So earlier in the year, you approved an initial one that had an estimate of how many we might have to process. We have added a few to the list, so you're approving an amended declaration of need this evening.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Feel free to make a motion.
I will move that we accept this.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes on this. Item number 10.4, nominations for membership on the Los Angeles County Committee on School District Organization. Do you have anything on this, Dr. Stowe? I forget.
I do not. There's been actually a lot in the newspaper recently about this committee as it relates to Santa Monica, Malibu. So this is kind of a relatively obscure committee that the county, based on the Board of Supervisors, trustee areas, they take nominations from school districts. And so we actually work directly with them. Dr. Butler and I, when he was in Palos Verdes and I was here and you know, in the property transfer between Palos Verdes and Torrance at the Rolling Hills Country Club. So we got to know that process a little bit. So all that being said, they're asking for nominees from the 2nd and 3rd supervisorial districts, neither of which we are a member. We're a member of District 4. Martha Deutsch is the board's representative currently. And so this item just calls for information or, you know, any nominees that the board may have from either of those two supervisorial districts.
Are there any thank you, Dr. Stowe. Are there any nominations for those two districts from my fellow board members?
I'd like to nominate Dr. Gerson. No, was another board member that we would nominate? I'm a little confused.
Well, it's outside our district, so
Yeah.
it can't.
Oh, we can't nominate.
Yeah, and it's
Someone who lives in.
not current board members, it's a representative of the board.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay, understood. Thank you. I don't know
Could
any other
nominate
school board
someone
members,
from-
so I'll step back now.
That's good. Thank you. I would love to nominate Dr. Gerson for more things too.
Oh, thank you.
All right, then we don't need a motion for that item. And we'll move on to item number 10.5, discussion and approval of Torrance Unified School District Governance Handbook. Dr. Stowe.
Thank you, President Liu. I know one of the things that you said when you became president last December was that you would like to see us get a governance handbook for TUSD. And so here's a draft version of this. Last spring, as you all experienced, but just for the public as well, we went through a 40-hour master's in governance course, 5 different modules, 8 hours per module. and we completed that as a governance team. And then over the summer, we also had a session, a 6-hour board workshop led by Luan Rivera from California School Boards Association on July 21st. And this is the product of that board workshop, was to put together a governance handbook that then we would bring to the board for review and approval. This is kind of a living, breathing document, as they say. It's something that the board could add to or revisit, maybe annually or more frequently than that, should the need arise. But it outlines some of we obviously have board bylaws, which are the rules in which we operate. But this governance handbook specifically calls out areas that are of priority to the board, and it's how we want to act as a governing team, and how we want to represent the district and what our focus is. And so at this point in time, it's I've already noticed some errors and corrections and things to be made. It's a draft, but happy to continue to take some notes and hear the board's thought on this, because this is the first opportunity that you've had to discuss this in person, or really discuss it at all as a group, and weigh in on it. So if you adopt it tonight, great. If we want to take it back and you want to direct me to make some changes, and we could do that, and bring it back at the next meeting for adoption. It's really in your court.
Thank you, Dr. Stowe. Yes, that's a very good overview of what happened here. I first learned about governance handbook during the CSBA. By the way, CSBA is California School Board Association, on their workshop for presidents of boards. And I learned that almost all school districts had a governance handbook. And this handbook, I'll read from the agenda. What it does is it reflects the governance team's discussion about developing and sustaining a framework for effective governance, and includes highlights of their conversations about unity of purpose, roles, norms, and protocols that enable the governance team to continue to perform its responsibilities in a way that best serves all students. You mentioned the Masters in Governance class that was 40 hours long, and our own workshop. So I want to let everyone know that it is a total of 46 hours per person for us 5 board members and Superintendent Stowe. And so 46 times 6 would be, I think, 276 hours all put together, at least, not to mention other CSBA and other help that we got for putting this governance handbook together. I want to thank my board colleagues, Dr. Stowe and the CSBA, for their participation in creating this handbook. And if there are any comments, edits, questions about this handbook from my fellow board members? Dr. Gerson?
As you said, we kind of gave information during our workshop to the representative. So this is our first chance to see it, and a lot of it's pretty standard. A lot of it, we did it. Seems like a pretty good representation of different people's feelings. But there were a few things on the unity of purpose page that I wanted to ask us to look at, or Dr. Stowe to look at. The second bullet point, if we could just work on the grammar. On the third bullet point, it says center student voices in governance and decision making. I was thinking more in terms of elevating student voice. That was more of the verb I was looking for. Want students and to have increased voice and elevated voice, and to have Dr. Stowe and I have discussed this a lot. Those student presentations that we've had have been, like there were the 2 boys a couple years ago who told us about their experience with vaping on campus, and it was a great launching point off and learning opportunity for us. Last year, we got to hear from a group of lesbians, our student actors about their experiences, which was again, a wonderful opportunity for us to take a look at an inequity and it had a chance to respond to that. So elevating student voice is important, but I don't want to also take away the value of the parent voice. And so I just wanted to be, center just seems a little too specific, and elevate seems more along the lines of my purpose. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the sixth bullet point, it says, take care of our students in every way coming out of the pandemic. That makes me a little uncomfortable. It's awfully vague. I don't know if we can be more specific or use different language. I know we're talking about academic needs, we're talking about social emotional needs. Dr. Stowe hit on the fact that in the beginning of the year with supply chains and hearing about not all students having access to food, even though we get to offer them free food this year and taking care of those issues. So there's a lot of ways in which we do service students, but this is I don't think every way fits fits what we can do. So I don't know if we can work on that a little bit.
Maybe something like develop the whole child, and then academically, social emotionally, physically, that kind of language. Maybe whole child. I can pull something together.
Yes, please look into that. Thanks.
Just to add to that one, take out of the pandemic, because this right now.
Correct.
Here, it's like we're not going to be in the, so it just seems too narrow.
Agreed.
Trustee Park?
Yeah, looking at the protocols for structure and process, I was a little bit curious as to how it matched up with our purpose or for our vision. It seems a little bit, I know that these are the main topics that we discussed during the workshop, but I would like to see some sort of, it feels like it's missing some pieces. There are 3 main buckets, and I feel like for a handbook, perhaps there should be more. So if there are missing elements based on what we discussed for our responsibilities or for the unity of purpose, if we can take another look as a board at if there are additional topics that we would like to include under the protocols. Because I feel like that discussion got cut a little bit short during the actual workshop. So I'd like to just have more time to see if there are things we'd like to add.
We can definitely bring this back at a future meeting after we tweak it and edit it a little bit, and it'll come up either at the next board meeting or another one after that. Or
Just on that item, the unity of purpose more is the what, and the protocols are the how. We're going to go about things, and whether it's communication or dealing with concerns or complaints. And so I can go back and take a look at my notes to see what else we discussed there, and how that might fit. I'm just not clear on what that would be at this instant.
Yes. And I think that we weren't able to get to what all of the board members perhaps were thinking in terms, I don't know, I think that there were things that I will also go through my notes, but I know that there wasn't enough time during the workshop to fully explore some of these questions I had in terms of how do we understand what like elevating student voices means, or what does it mean for like, I guess it does fall under communication, a lot of the questions that I had, but just building it out a little bit more than just responding to community members, but and more into how are we supposed to also like gather information, and what is our like what is our understanding of how to engage with public, and so yeah, I'm not sure exactly either, but I just would like to see if there were things that we just didn't have time to discuss during the workshop, and things that might want to be added. We might want to add.
okay. What we can do is, if anybody have more suggestions on how we can tweak our handbook a little better, This is our product from this board, and we want to make it as perfect as possible. So you send any suggestions to Dr. Stowe, and we'll put something together to be discussed and reviewed at another board meeting.
And like I said, it's a working document, so if it's not all here now, I mean, I've seen some districts that have governance handbooks 80 pages long, 100 pages long. So, and others that are 10, right? So we can always add to it, and that's the whole purpose, that on a regular basis, whether that's every January or, you know, every summer, that we are looking at this as a team to be able to ensure that it's capturing what we want it to capture, right? Whether that's our vision for the district or you know, some of the more specific protocols that we want to you know, hold each other accountable to.
And I think the idea was to also have a quick reference guide. So I like the fact that it's short and sweet. Otherwise, if it's another manual, then we're reading this, board policies. And so trying to keep it short and sweet is good. I like the length. So thank you for that.
I absolutely agree. When it's too thick, no one looks at it. Sounds good?
Right. So we'll make some tweaks and bring it back.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stowe. Item number 10.6, discussion and adoption of LA County Department of Public Health modified quarantine. And we have a presentation.
Yes, good evening. So I'm sure the board is aware that late last week, there was news media reports that there were pending changes coming from Los Angeles County Department of Public Health relating to exposure management. They did update their guidance, and so I'm going to share exactly what those updates are for your consideration. And I just have a few slides to help illustrate. So essentially what we're talking about is a new modified quarantine option that's for students who have been exposed in a classroom while they were fully masked and the person who was infectious was fully masked. I'd like to point out that this guidance isn't actually new. It's been the guidance that's part of the California Department of Public Health guidance for the entirety of the beginning of the school year. Los Angeles County Department of Public Health was being more cautious at the start of the school year. And so after they've watched the data that's coming out of COVID cases and seeing declining rates among students, they've now come out and said, we're going to align with the state. And so we'll just go quickly over exactly what this means. I did write this verbatim, and I do intend to read it. And the reason is because I want to make sure that the people at home get to hear exactly what the proposed change is. So please bear with me as I read this out loud. The optional modified quarantine for TK-12 students. Modified quarantine allows asymptomatic students under self-quarantine orders who are exposed to a person with diagnosed COVID-19 in any school setting where students are supervised by school staff, indoors, outdoors, or on school buses, to continue in-person academic activities that are part of the regular school curriculum and provided during school hours. As a reminder, persons who are fully vaccinated and/or have recovered from laboratory-confirmed COVID-19 within the last 90 days do not need to self-quarantine. An asymptomatic student under self-quarantine orders may be approved for modified quarantine if specific criteria outlined below are met. If these criteria cannot be met, then the exposed student must remain in home quarantine as outlined above. There are 8 points. So the exposure was to a person with a COVID-19 diagnosis in any school setting where students are supervised by school staff, indoors, outdoors, or on school buses. And the key point here is that they were supervised by staff, and so it's observed that they were both masked. Number 2, the exposed student remains asymptomatic. Number 3, the exposed student and the person with a COVID-19 diagnosis must have each worn a mask consistently and correctly during the entire exposure period. This includes any outdoor exposures. Prior to applying modified quarantine, verification is required of mask-to-mask exposure between the person with a COVID-19 diagnosis and the exposed student. School administrators must keep records of this verification and provide to public health upon request. 4, the exposed student is not part of a TK-12 outbreak. Due to the high rate of secondary transmission and outbreaks, students with an outbreak exposure must fully quarantine at home. They may be released after day 7 if they have a negative viral test result from a specimen collected on or after day 5 from the date of last exposure to a confirmed COVID-19 case in the outbreak, provided they remain without symptoms. And just as a reminder, an outbreak is 3 or more cases that are connected to one another. Okay, just a few more. Number 5, students under modified quarantine are still subject to the health officer quarantine order and must stay at home for the duration of quarantine, except for in-person instruction. So the modification is where they can come to class, but that's it. Number 6, students under modified quarantine are required to wear a mask indoors and outdoors and on school buses while at school. The exception is for eating and drinking, where they must be at least 6 feet away from other students and preferably outdoors. So note, students are not currently required to wear masks outdoors, but a person on modified quarantine would be. Number 7, students under modified quarantine must be tested twice a week using an FDA-authorized viral COVID-19 test, for example, PCR or antigen, in a healthcare setting or certified testing site. It is recommended that the first test be conducted immediately after exposure, day 1 or day 2 from the date of last exposure, and the second test be conducted at least 3 days later. Students may be released from quarantine after day 7 from the date of last exposure if their second test is conducted on day 5 or later. The test is negative and the student remains without symptoms. Okay, and finally, it is strongly recommended that unvaccinated, asymptomatic individuals who are not identified as close contacts, but who are present in a school classroom or school activity with a confirmed case be tested weekly for 2 weeks, 14 days following the date of the last exposure in the classroom or activity. If capacity allows, consider also testing asymptomatic, fully vaccinated individuals that were present in the school, classroom, or activity with a confirmed case, but were not close contacts. So just I know you followed along with me there, but just to quickly summarize what we're saying is if students are in a classroom and they're considered a close contact during while another student was there who was infectious and everyone was wearing a mask, then the student may enter a modified quarantine, which means they get to keep coming to class. They must remain wearing a mask. They have to take 2 COVID tests during this time to make sure that they don't produce a positive result. As long as they remain asymptomatic and they test negative, they would be able to keep coming to school. They would not be able to do sports. They would not be able to come to any school activities. They're not supposed to be out and about on the town, with their parents and siblings after school and on the weekends, but they could keep coming to class. So with that, our recommendation is, we're prepared to implement this. We do believe we will be able to have more students be able to stay in class and have, less having to go home and transition to a learning from home situation. But we bring this to you for your consideration and look for your direction.
Thank you, Dr. Ferris. Do you have a question, Dr. Gerson?
I do.
Actually, before you go there, let me just give a quick introduction. The original title of this agenda item was a letter to the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health requesting for flexibility in regards to the quarantine requirements. I began drafting this letter to LAC-DPH last week, before the county DPH came up with the modified quarantine protocol that they dated only last Friday, actually. And the original protocol, as you all probably know, is that unvaccinated students must quarantine for up to 10 days if they have been exposed to an infected person. Since students the problem that I saw was that students under 12, since they cannot be vaccinated yet, all elementary school students are unvaccinated. And if that elementary school student came into contact with an infected person, the student must miss school for up to 10 days, even though most of them are negative. I am very pleased to see that the county also recognized this problem and is now following the state's modified quarantine policy. We need to bring this up because I noticed that some school districts are not adopting this. They have come out to say they're still gonna go with a stricter protocol, and I don't think that it is necessary. And so I just wanna make sure that our school district follows these county rules. And I believe it's the right thing to do to allow more students to stay in school as long as they are following all safety protocols such as wearing masks indoors. Dr. Gerson, you had something to say or ask?
I had a question. No, it's been very interesting as you kind of brought up. LACDPH, especially this particular month, has been very accommodating and changing a lot as you listen to different school entities, both public and private, trying to work with LACDPH to find the best ways to manage this and to keep students in school as much as possible. So part of the reason why we've seen so many changes over the course of just a couple of weeks is them constantly changing by taking feedback. And so that's pretty cool. No, I was just thinking as I was listening to the presentation, when I look across everyone here on stage and everyone in the audience, everyone is properly masked, as LACDPH would recommend. But when I listen to this and read this, there's no actual description of what masked actually means. And so I was wondering, that kind of difficult. So I'm wondering, do we have a description of what we are calling masked that you could share with us?
Yes, we do, and that is provided by LA County DPH. In fact, I had a question on this today from a teacher and sent them through the principal exactly what the wording is from LA County DPH about what mask wearing is. So they do have it outlined completely. I'll be happy to forward that to the board.
Wonderful. And yes, Mrs. Liu, I also do support this.
Great, thank you, Dr. Gerson. Dr. Butler, like the guidelines was, one of them was like putting a handkerchief over your face is not considered a mask.
That's
something like
correct.
that, right? Okay, I see. Vice
I
President
have a question,
Brown?
Dr. Ferris. The first question that I have is that on quarantine, you know how the kids, they cannot, when they go on the bus, they have to be masked, whatever. How are we going to follow these quarantine kids? Like, who keeps them accountable? Like, how do we know they're not going to just do normal things? I'm just wondering, how do we keep that accountable?
So we've talked a lot about how are we monitoring things like, the testing, right? We're adding another testing element. These are things that are going to have to be monitored by our health office staff and all of the support, the office support that they have in the office. It really becomes, an effort it's a team effort, really. So when we have students who are in the classroom, we're relying on the adults in the room to monitor and make sure that everybody are remaining masked. As far as what's happening outside of school, so when we're talking about it's a modified quarantine, we can monitor you while you're here at school, but we're relying on an honor system and the parents to follow through with the instructions outside of school.
But just to follow up with that, parents, make sure you follow up. You make sure you keep that honor system, right? We're in this together as a community. I want to especially thank Dr. Ferris and the team for doing an outstanding job of keeping our students safe. Again, we're doing a great job. And I think that recently, the LA Times published an article that stated that LA County safety policies are working as COVID rates are low. And again, it's always been said throughout the time that there's no transmission at schools, right? That this doesn't happen. It's very rare. And so that's the reason why I sincerely believe is with community outreach and community feedback, talking to LADP, emailing them, calling them, speaking out, even to our supervisors. That's why we saw the protocol change with youth sports, even this modified quarantine. And I think, again, it's a picture of what is going on regarding our COVID cases. Our COVID cases are going down. Now, as a matter of fact, now in LA County, we're below 1,000 in hospitalizations. it just shows that we are going on the right track. And so one thing I wanted to really express is that this modified quarantine is good news. That's what I want everyone to understand. This is not something new. This is actually a lot less restrictive of what we've been doing. And this is why we're able to ensure that our students are able to stay on campus and to be in a learning environment. And so that's why we are glad. It's been a very difficult thing to send kids home for 10 days. But I want to thank President Liu for initiating this and doing this as well, because of the fact it is important that our students stay in school and learn without the least amount of disruption as possible. So Dr. Ferris, thank you so much again for all that you've done for monitoring, keeping everything updated, making sure everything is following the protocols. And so it's been great.
If I could just add, I'm sorry, one point that I think is salient here that I didn't mention before is while anybody who looks at the dashboard will see that we have COVID cases in our schools, but we're not seeing transmission at school. What we're seeing is transmission amongst siblings who are at home and without masks and in close contact, but at school, we're not seeing that spread, and that's why we feel confident to make this recommendation.
Thank you, Dr. Ferris. Trustee Park?
Yes, I had a couple of questions as well. For criteria 3, what is verification? So what are examples of acceptable forms of verification? And then following up on Board Member Vice President Han's comments, like, I guess, are we designating individuals to be supervising students under the modified quarantine orders? And if so, I think I wanted in that training for them to be cognizant of making sure that we're reducing any sort of stigmatization of these students that are on campus, and just making sure that that our processes that are in place make the students feel comfortable and not separate or different just because they're under these modified quarantine orders. And then also about testing, will they be tested by Fulgent? Will they be tested through TUSD, or will they have to find their own testing for those testing processes or for those 2 tests? And then for my last question is, are students and families given an option to go with the stricter quarantine order? Is it optional for them to follow the modified quarantine? Or maybe there are some families that may feel more comfortable keeping their students at home for the full 10 days. Will they be allowed to do so or not?
Okay, so I'm going to start with that one, and then I'm going to go to. So the answer to that is yes, right? This is an optional modified quarantine that we're willing to support, and any family that opts to be more, cautious, we're certainly going to support that effort too, and we're equipped to do it both ways. To go back to the first question, which was, what does verification look like? And what we're really just looking to do is have the teacher in that classroom say, yes, I will confirm my students were wearing masks at all times. We don't have periods where they were unsupervised or where, they had a snack break under supervision and they were close together. So that's essentially what we're talking about when we say verification, is that the adult will attest to, I was supervising this, and I saw that they were wearing masks the whole time. And that's really all it is. In terms of what does it look like when they're in modified quarantine, and there are a few more restrictions, right? I don't think that we're, at least at this moment in time, and this is a developing process, I don't think we're envisioning where we're going to take these students and say, you only get to play over here so I can watch you and make sure you remain masked. I mean, this is a matter of us training our students and getting them to go along with what's expected. There will be an element of having some staff have to be informed that, certain students need to remain masked at all times, and they'll be looking to watch that. But absolutely, we're not looking to call any additional attention to these students or stigmatize them, kind of as you described. I'm forgetting what the next point was. Oh, the testing.
Yeah.
So multiple options here, right? So we do have the Fulgent option, and certainly that's kind of our most convenient option to offer to our families. Certainly they can use that option. Dr. Butler has been working on some additional test options, which he can probably summarize for us here, that may be even more accessible to some of our students in different locations that can't come to the testing site. And then ultimately, people can really go wherever they want, right? So if somebody has a personal provider or somewhere that's close to them that they prefer to go to, those are all valid methods for getting tested and providing proof.
And the supply chain issues have never been more present than in testing and COVID testing right now. It is truly the most maddening thing that we've been working with on a procurement basis to get in. However, fingers crossed, by next week, we will have antigen solutions that nurses can use at all sites. Our health staff can use at all sites. So we need to get the tests in. We need to make sure that all of our health staff are trained on the protocols. But then that's a way of getting something immediate right at that school site rather than coming to Fulton.
Thank you.
I'd like to add too, what Dr. First said. I mean, having visited a number of schools and just, North High today at lunch, it's much greater than 50%, the number of students that just are wearing the mask anyway, walking around. So, I mean, I would say it's closer to 80 or 90 when they're not eating. And so it's just, they're just doing it, not required, but it's, those are just my observations. And I think all of us that have been on campuses, we're seeing that students, even walking home, I see students just walking by themselves wearing a mask. So it's not, students will not be stigmatized by saying, have a mask on and therefore you're a close contact. So we're pretty confident in our site administrators to make sure that, and staff that are supervising the students that it'll be fine.
Good question.
President Liu, just one comment.
Dr. Mohammed?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody that's kind of involved in this. Our students, our staff, both on classified cert, administration, parents. We're only able to consider this because everyone's following protocols and they're working. And so we're able to show success. And the fact that, Dr. Ferris is saying that we're prepared and equipped just shows that, we're ready. And so thank you for everyone's cooperation in this. This is why we are able to consider something like this, which is great for students. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed. If there are no further comments or questions, anyone could make a motion.
I move that we adopt the modified quarantine policy.
Second.
All in favor? Or no further discussions, right? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. We are going to adopt the LA County modified quarantine policy. Item number 11 is the consent agenda. Approval of the consent agenda as a whole. All matters listed on the consent agenda, a consent calendar from general functions consent through administrative services bond consent are considered to be routine and will be enacted with one vote. There is no discussion of consent calendar items unless members of the governing board, public, or staff request that specific item be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Are there any items that my board or staff want to pull?
President Liu, can I pull 16.4?
Yes, 16.4. Anything else? All right, why don't we go ahead and get a motion to approve the rest of the agenda items from item number 12 to items under 18, not counting 16.4.
I move to approve 12.1 through 18.4, except 16.4.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passed. All those items are approved. Dr. Han, Vice President Han, 16.4.
Thank you, President Liu. I wanted to address this issue about the salary rates for our substitute teachers. I know that the agenda item states that the board approved the increase of the substitute daily rate from 130 to 155. I believe that we need to be a little bit more competitive. I think that in this environment right now, where I personally have heard stories where our schools are struggling to find substitute teachers, where they're short, and it's creating a hardship on the administration at our schools. And I feel like if we don't get ahead of this problem, it's only going to get worse. And so I would like to suggest that we raise the daily rate to 185, 185 per day. And again, I want us to be ahead of the curve. I want us to be, and again, the argument may be made that, you know what, doesn't matter what we pay, people are not going to come because they don't feel safe. That's why they don't want to substitute. They don't want to do whatever it may be. That's true. That could be the case. That could be the case where they don't feel safe. They don't feel like, you know what, I want to do this. But at the end of the day, I can't control what people do. I can only put what I think is the best foot forward for us. We can put the best offer out there and say, hey, we are really committed to this. We want our teachers to know we are committed to this, that we really are going to work hard to find able substitutes to come and to support our students. And I know that, again, why 185? I know that there are some districts that are close by that are doing 175. Again, because of the fact that we're competing with other districts to get substitutes, I know we're not going to go above 200 like other districts, but I believe that we have the funding that allows us to be able to do this for our students and our school. And I think the reason why we don't provide the substitute teachers, the cost of what's going on our campuses right now is just so hard. And I think that the opportunity cost there is so high. And therefore, I think to mitigate that is that we offer a very competitive wage for our substitute teachers. So I would like to at least entertain that thought of, rather than doing it at 130 to 155, that we actually raise it to 185.
And for the long-term substitute rate, do you want to go, since you increased it by 30? Did you want 230?
225 for the long,
225.
yeah, sub rate.
185 and 225.
Can I ask
Dr. Gerson?
Dr. Ferris, do you have access to rates of other districts? Could you look up a few districts for me? Ones that I would consider similar would probably be Temecula, Glendale, South Pasadena, and Palos Verdes. Can you tell me what their rates are?
Okay, so what I have at my disposal is a survey that was sent out to other HR administrators across LA County. And so we kind of maintain this comparison chart, and I get updates periodically. So these are the most recent updates that I have. So I want to just add that caveat.
Thank you.
Starting with Glendale, I have their rates, which was recently this input. So I know that this is current. Glendale is paying 165 for the daily rate and 200 for their long-term rate. Going to South Pasadena. And this rate wasn't, this was recently updated on September 2nd. They're paying 175 for their daily rate. And then they have two long-term rates. It's a graduated rate. So it goes 185 and then it graduates up to 200 after a certain period of time. For Palos Verdes, this has not been recently updated, so the numbers I have for PV is 130 for the daily and 160 for the long term.
And Temecula, please.
I looked up Temecula while Dr. Ferris was reading what he had in his hands. Temecula is 124 for short term, 141 for long term for a teacher in a general ed classroom. They do, however, have a special ed substitute teacher at 200 a day, speech and language pathologist at 250 a day, and difficult to fill credential types, whatever that means, at 150 instead of the 141.
Thank you.
I'm curious, how did we come to 155? What were we looking, what other districts were we looking at, and how did we come to the 155? And then I guess my opinion is I would like to see and assess whether increasing the salary to 155 or a little bit more, whether it's going to help us meet our need. And I guess I'm also curious, what is the cost of incremental increases as opposed to like one bigger jump in your experience and opinion? And how will it affect the larger market?
So the 155 number, and I will grant you, this is not a perfectly scientific measure, but it's the average of the numbers, the rates that we have posted here. And as I mentioned, it's not clear how current this list is, but of the rates that I have, 153 is actually the average on our chart here. 168 is the median. For the long term, it's 192 on the average and 194 on the median. We also took a look at what are the neighbors paying, because that's who we're competing with. And so there's some specific neighbors we're looking at. So we're always looking at PV, Redondo, Manhattan Beach. However, we also have some neighbors that are paying significantly more than that. One of those neighbors is LAUSD, which can't be ignored, and they're paying over 200 for their daily rate right now, and they're the biggest district, obviously, that we're comparing to. We also have some smaller districts that have implemented some higher rates for this year because of the situation that we're in. So we're seeing districts like Hawthorne paying 225 a day. And so we're seeing some inflated rates all over the place. Some of them are listing them as for this year, we're doing this because of this crisis that we're in. As far as predicting what are the impacts and what's the difference, what difference will we see at a 155 rate versus a 185 rate? It's a guessing game, right? But what I would say is it's a short pool, and most of the substitutes that we are all trying to attract are working on all of the same districts, and so there is a bit of a competitive factor here, right? And so if substitutes are getting called for positions that are paying 200 plus, we're going to lose, right? Additionally, and I think this is worth mentioning, there are a number of substitute teacher, like independent contracting agencies that are providing districts substitute services. Torrance is not currently using any, but other districts are. They're using, it's called Swing Education. Scoot is another one that is commonly used. And basically the districts are paying a fee on top of what their daily rate is to try to bring those folks in. They're also understaffed. So the understaff is all over the place, but those agencies are also monitoring all of the rates that we're paying. And so if we were to try to attract anybody out of those agencies, there's already kind of this set mark for knowing that there are these higher rates out there. So all of that is to say, the more that we can pay, the better, I think, whatever we can afford.
You know what Redondo and Manhattan are, the rates?
So Manhattan Beach, we have at 135 and 161 right now. Redondo Beach, I have listed at 140 and 180.
Dr. Ferris, I said Temecula, but I meant Tustin.
Tustin, I don't have, but we can look it up real quick for you.
Thanks.
Mr. Han?
Just another quick question. How long is a day for a substitute teacher? How many hours a day?
About 7 hours.
7 hours. So basically it comes up to $25 an hour for a substitute to be paid at $175. I want to keep that in mind, right? So it's not an outrageous cost, right? You think that minimum wage is $15, $25 is $175, right? And so to me, you got to deal with these kids. Like we always say about teachers, right? You take care of a class of 23 kids, 26 kids, 27 kids, right? Especially middle school, high school. Yeah, you try that for all day. It's a battle. That's a game changer, right? And for $25 a day, I'm more than willing to pay $25 a day, $25 an hour for a substitute teacher. And I think that's why, to me, when I break it down by per hour, it's not an unreasonable amount to me for us to bring a little bit of sanity to our schools, because again, because of COVID, we're going to have a lot of teachers missing days, and we're going to have to fill these substitute positions. And so if we could be competitive out there, again, there's no guarantee that higher cost, like we said, I'm not saying that more money will bring in more people right away, but it gives us a better chance. I just want that chance to be ahead of the game. And that's why I think 185 is a reasonable number. I'm going to do more than $25 an hour.
Dr. Mohammed?
we can certainly bring this back every month and revisit it, right? Would it help to maybe start off at an increment and then see how it goes? If we have success, great. If we don't, we can revisit it and bring it back.
Feel like we've played our cards then, and then they won't come here until we increase. more. I feel like
Now you're
at
just
this
holding
public
us up to the
discussion.
whole world now.
It's okay.
No,
Yes,
not
we
this
gave
one.
the strategy away.
And Tustin is 141 for its daily rate. It does not have on the website the long-term substitute rate.
Dr. Ferris, there's been a lot of, I mean, have we been able to supply the substitute? teachers?
We are struggling right now. So that depiction is accurate on a daily basis. We are having unfilled absences and sub requests. We are managing, so we're able to piece together some type of coverage at our sites, but there are no days at this point where we're having every absence covered.
And around how many, just for the public to know, around how many substitute teachers do we usually need out of the over 1,000
So,
that we have?
so a normal day would be, how many do we request on a normal day?
Yeah, just an average day, because we have 1,000 teachers.
Um,
We were 1,000 teachers, and how many are we talking about?
don't hold me to this, but it wouldn't be unusual for us to have over 50 sub requests. We're going with about, on a normal day, 8 uncovered right now. Like it's really tough right now.
If it goes on, if it keeps happening, perhaps all of you will have to start being substitute teachers as well to cover for others.
Don't say that too loud. The teachers union will want to see that.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I think, going from 130 to 150, so 130 is obviously lower than some of our South Bay districts, right? We're down to 140, Manhattan 135, and Palos Verdes at 130. But we haven't given 155 a try. We're making the assumption that we're gonna still run into a sub problem, which we might. But 155 is greater than our South Bay neighbors, right? So it does make us competitive with them. But I do hear the argument that I think we want to remain even more competitive across the region. And so I would be in support of increasing a little bit more from 155, but I'm not sure if 180 going all the way up to 185 would be fiscally prudent for us, because I think we need to measure our success and see what kind of value we get, and if it solves our recruitment problem, and for subs, what I'm trying to say. And if it does, great, and if it doesn't, then I think we can always revisit it back. I think I'm open to the idea, but just jumping straight ahead without first having some data at hand seems a little bit fiscally irresponsible. And so I would probably be in the 170, 175 range, just to remain competitive, but not to exceed beyond that.
I also agree. Maybe we could model after South Pasadena's numbers.
That would be
One-
175 and
175, 200.
and then I believe South Pasadena has a graduated
Yeah, well, we don't have to
pay.
graduate it.
So you say you want to be like South Pass, but
Well,
no.
we could do the 175, 200.
Okay.
If I'm okay with that.
Mhm. And this would be also in the condition that this would be a limited term.
I mean, once you raise the sub rate, it's pretty much going to be there.
Okay.
Um,
I thought you mentioned that for other districts that they specify that it was limited term.
Yeah, there are some districts that have, and the ones that I'm seeing are the ones that have really increased to some of these higher numbers, but they put notes on our survey that they're approved for this current school year at these rates.
And I'll just add that, and I know as board members, you've received emails from teachers for years. And if you talk to teachers there, we can document the last 10 years where there's just a general shortage of subs. This year is exceptional, of course. But even when we're doing staff development and needing subs on top of teachers who are just sick on any given day, there are shortages. So I don't see the need going away anytime soon. So taking action and doing something just for this year, I don't know that that's going to get us very far aside from just this year. And so I would recommend that if the board is going to decide raise the rates to whatever it is, 175, 200, that we're in agreement that that's where it's going to be. If at some point in 5 years, 3 years, where we have a surplus of subs that are willing to work, we can revisit it. But also the sub rates, when employees get increases in their salary, the sub rate does not adjust. All the other things adjust, stipends and things like that, but the sub rate does not adjust. And so by doing some sort of increase now, it also is kind of taking care of future years of possible increases just to attract people, get them in the door. We also believe that TUSD is a great place to sub. I know myself, coming out of college, it was great to be able to sub in Torrance because there were so many different schools. You could work every day and you went through a sub desk, right? And so you got to know the people and the schools. And so, if we can get people in the door at a higher rate, they'll enjoy it. They'll like the people, they'll like our students and want to continue to be here and not bounce around districts.
Dr. Butler, if the board chooses to go $20 above staff's recommendation, what's your business officer opinion?
As I've said on other occasions, you pay me to be the most fiscally conservative person in the district.
Exactly.
So I think you know where this is going. I actually did like the salary survey that was done to determine that 155 and 200 would be reasonable. I can see the attraction on the extra 25 for those daily rates. There are people that have not committed to us long-term, and they're literally out there shopping every day for what assignment they would take. So given that I've seen the significant work of human resources in trying to fill these positions, not just these positions, but classified as well. I mean, they're working like crazy. I'd be willing to do the extra 25 just to see if we can eliminate a lot of the workload that's there. So I would endorse the 175, 200.
Thank you.
So it would be keeping long-term at the recommended 200.
I think that's still very competitive with the other districts in the area.
Any further questions or comments? I am definitely, I've always said that, education employees, especially teachers, are undervalued, not getting enough respect in our country. And I want to do what we can. And in this situation, I mean, there is clearly a dire need. And I also agree with Dr. Mohammed. I think that 175, 200 would be a good number. And hopefully we can encourage more people to apply to us. And if it doesn't work out, I'm giving away the strategy again, then we can revisit this issue. But however, we already actually, in our area, I understand from Dr. Ferris's data that we're already one of the higher, at 175, we will be the highest around here in South Bay.
Until the other districts also increase. And then
And I'm okay with that, actually, to be honest.
And the war for substitute teachers continues.
Yes, and I think that being a substitute teacher is extra hard. A lot of times they do not know when they have an assignment until the night before, or sometimes even in the morning of. And what do you do with a class full of kids whose teacher's missing? It severely affects the students' education. So I definitely want to do what we can to encourage more people to apply to our wonderful district where we treat our employees very well. And we definitely are always open to more suggestions. And I would like to make the motion to follow Dr. Mohammed's suggestion of changing the wages from 130 to 175 for substitute teacher daily rate, and from 170 to 200 for the long-term substitute daily rate, effective October 1st.
I will second that motion.
Thank you, Dr. Gersten. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. We are raising the wages for substitute teacher. Thank you, Dr. Mohammed, for your suggestion.
No, I appreciate Vice President Hunt for raising the issue. I think that was a great call on that. Thank you so much.
Okay, now we have approved that. We're all done with the consent calendar. Item number 19, as usual, is the board calendar for all. Item number 20, comments from members of the Board of Education. 20.1 will go with Vice President Han, a report from the board representative to the Southern California Regional Occupational Center.
So just to report, we had our board meeting last week. As I stated last board meeting, that there was an issue that was brought up about allowing a school called FinPrep to be, which is a charter school, to operate on SoCal Rock's property, a possible lease. And even though the lease was not discussed, they wanted to have a resolution stating that we supported the reinstatement to become a charter. Which something that I felt like was not in the best interest of Torrance Unified. So I asked Dr. Stowe and Dr. Butler. Dr. Butler came and gave a wonderful presentation and a very stern presentation. And to be honest, I felt like he was unfairly treated. He was disrespected, in my opinion, to be honest, Dr. Butler. And I apologize for that on behalf. But again, I thought he was very convincing at the same time. And so, but we were able to get rid of the statement that stated that we wanted to support them to be reinstated as a county-wide charter school. Instead, we simply stated that we support their core mission and their values. That was the resolution that came down to a vote, and only 2 of us opposed that resolution. But the majority approved, and so therefore the resolution was approved, stating the SoCal Rock supports the core mission and values of FinPrep. And so, again, the idea of what they're trying to do is a noble idea. We're not debating that at all. But again, it's the implementation of it that's going to be problematic right here in Torrance. And so it's still not a charter school, and that's going to be another battle for them. But again, we wanted to state a report of our disappointment in that resolution at the same time that we just cannot support it. And so that's pretty much the report from our SoCal Rock meeting. Any questions, thoughts?
Which other school district is the one that?
The Redondo Beach and us are the 2 districts that opposed the resolution.
Any questions or comments from my fellow board colleagues?
I have a concern. So SoCal Rock in the Joint Powers Authority, the JPA, which includes us and other school districts, they operate under the JPA to educate the students in CTE career pathways. They're already leasing property to a private school and looking now to lease property to a charter school, which both compete with the members of the JPA. And so it concerns me if this is the model that they're going toward. We don't want our entity to be competing against our business. So that's my concern is, where are they going strategically, and are they just going to be leasing property? And is that what they're going to be doing? Because like I said, they're supposed to support and help our students with CTE, not compete with us in our business.
That's exactly the question that the Redondo Beach member brought up. Are we just becoming a leasing entity now rather than an educational facility? Because we're just leasing out everything to everyone at that point. And the argument that they used was that, like you said, because we already went to a Christian school and they're already taking students from us, then what's the deal with another school? To them, that they felt like it was okay. My whole point was the difference is that that's public funds. It's not one thing to be a private school, but it's another thing to have a public charter that we're competing against, where we have the same kind of funding mechanism at the same time. And so that was a concern that that was brought up. And their argument was that these students will be not only Torrance students, but from everywhere, right? Anywhere, anybody can come because it's a charter school. So therefore, it's not going to only, it will be maybe negligent effect, right? Where they can help a lot more students at that point for the sake of this call. But again, that you're exactly right, Dr. Gerson. It's a matter of what is the direction and what is the focus of SoCal Rock. But at the same time, their argument too was, well, if Torrance Unified would send more students, we wouldn't be in this mess. And so that's what was stated, and
Which is
therefore,
great because we brought up earlier, months ago, when I brought up how much they were charging
yes.
Torrance students versus those outside of the JPA, were being funded by the students we were sending. So their funding model was the issue, which is interesting that they bring that up when it's their funding model that is causing us in many ways to send fewer students.
Well, I think because ever since the LCAP got changed, I think that they put SoCal Rock in a very difficult position. And I think going forward, I think that one of the things I take away from this is that we have to figure out how we can work with SoCal Rock and build a relationship so that we obviously it's a JPA, so we want to be able to support them in what they're trying to accomplish in their vision. So I would like to ask if we as a board will be able to invite Dr. Atlas Hilaire. I don't remember if ever since I've been a board member, I don't think he's been here. So I think it'd be great for us just to make that initial step to invite Dr. Atlas, Dr. Hilaire to come and to speak to us and to address us as a board. I think they will do wonders, and I think that he will appreciate it, and I think it will give an opportunity for all of you to see Dr. Atlas, and we can ask him questions too, and have a good dialogue with him. And so, if that would be appropriate, I would like to ask President Liu to a meeting where we can invite him, and he's more than willing. We have brought this up, and recently he attended Redondo Beach's board meeting, I think, and he just shared with them what they're all about, because a lot of us are new, and so we don't have that relationship with SoCal Rock. And so I think because of it, I think it will be a good start for us to really restore this relationship and to move forward and see that, hey, we're in this together, and let them know that, hey, we're all in this together. And I think they would really appreciate it, knowing that we as a board support them. So.
That sounds great. I think it is long overdue that we have a presentation from Dr. Atlas here for in regards to Southern California Regional Occupational Center. I also met with him before and actually toured the facilities before I was a school board member and way before I decided to go into public service myself in the education arena. I think we can go ahead and invite Dr. Hare to come in. Will you put that on a convenient date?
Yes.
Dr. Snow?
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Hahn, would you like me to reach out to him, or would you
Yes,
like to
please.
reach out to
I
him?
think that'd be wonderful. Yeah.
Okay, absolutely.
Is that it for Southern California Rock?
Yes.
CSBA delegate report, Dr. Gerson.
I have no report this month or this week.
Thank you. And any other oral comments from the board? We can start with Dr. Mohammed.
No, thank you, President Liu. I just wanted to welcome again our student representative, Ms. Cotero. It's great to have you join our discussion and represent the student body. So thank you for being here today. Thank you.
Well said, Dr. Mohammed. Trustee Park? Dr. Gerson?
Thank you, but no comment.
Vice President Han?
Just a couple of things for me. First of all, I want to congratulate Sherry again. That is absolutely wonderful. What a wonderful job they're doing. And again, the adult school there, the school there is just a wonderful school. And so my hats off to the people at Sherry. So I really want to highlight that again. Also, I want to take time to thank all of our staff. I think for one thing, the public needs to understand that regarding the substitute teachers is that there's a lot of shortages right now in our district from nutrition services. We have stories where again, at a school, I heard that they just ran out of food and they had to figure out how they're going to feed the kids. And they had just pull out anything, anywhere, anyhow. And it's obviously a concern, not in nutrition services. For those of you who do not know, when you go and visit our administrative building here at Torrance, you will see Dr. Stowe opening the door for you, or Dr. Egan, or Dr. Butler, because they're literally sitting at the door opening it for you because we just don't have the staff. We don't, so everybody's taking turns managing the door, and you're realizing that everyone is really stepping up. And I want to appreciate everyone, from all the staff, all the people who are doing duties that are not part of your duty, but yet you realize it has to be done. And so thank you. I know that we're like managing, piecing things together. Like Dr. Ferris is saying, we just manage, we just got to figure it out. And so I want to just express and recognize that, we know that there are shortages, and yet we're grateful for everyone. Everyone is doing this, not just the staff, but for everybody on the campuses. And so we want to say thank you for that as well. Also, I want to say one thing we didn't recognize. One of the things that has been a joy at Torrance High School is the foreign students. I had to make a little story about the foreign. The kids at Torrance love the foreign students that have come this year. And so I just want to welcome them to all the foreign students that have come to Torrance. It's a great program. And so I just want to highlight this. The kids are just loving the foreigners. I think they're great. And the foreigners are really being interactive. And so I just want to applaud them and welcome them as well to our district. And for those who do not know, we do have a foreign students program here at Torrance Unified. I know they're always looking for hosts. So if you ever want to be a host to host a foreign student, please let us know regarding that. And last but not least, I want to wish the very best for all our seniors. Good luck on all your apps, your college apps, SATs. I know it's coming up soon. So this is your year. So I want to wish all of you the very best, especially as you come to crunch time. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Han. I want to, for those who don't know, I want to announce and congratulate our teacher, Laura Jane Bushell, who has been nominated as one of the candidates for the LA County Teacher of the Year. The event is going to happen this Friday, and we're here to support you. Thank you for your great work. Keep up with it. And here's also another teacher who recently got the Albert K. Farwell Outstanding Educator Award from the Boy Scouts of America. They notified us that our English language arts teacher at Jefferson Middle School, Brad Cheney, is the recipient of this year's award. And accompanying that letter that let us know it's just a lot of wonderful things about what this teacher did and why he is getting the award. Last but not least, I want to announce that BTS is coming this week to Torrance. It's not the Korean band that is so popular. BTS is the BTS stands for Back to School Night, our annual event. And it's happening for all schools, I believe this Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Some have had it in the last week or so.
Yes,
as
some
well.
earlier on in beginning of September also. But most of them are happening this week. And I really think that all parents, take advantage of the opportunity of using Zoom for BTS. It's so much easier to go from classroom to classroom without getting lost on the campus. So I encourage all of you to attend who have students. Dr. Crumpy, did you have anything? I wasn't sure if you were gesturing. Yes. Oh, because you like BTS too?
Still telling my heart to be still.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment. I want to say thank you to the board for opening the floor to the student voice. I think the inclusion of students like myself will prove really beneficial. And then I just want to say thank you to Dr. Crumpy for recognizing how students are struggling academically and just offering that extra support like throughout the day for students struggling. I think that's really important. And then Dr. Ferris, oh, sorry, Dr. Ferris for extending the opportunity at which students can be within the in-person teaching. I think being in class is really beneficial because I like, okay, myself and actually a few friends have all talked about how being in class has really just improved our quality of learning, especially because there's no distractions. So thank you for recognizing that. And then lastly, Mr. Han, thank you for bringing to light how freshmen are struggling, especially academically. Like it's completely passed my mind that a lot of these freshmen are transitioning from like 7th grade and then coming onto campus like brand new. I completely forgot. Like we've obviously done things out of like freshman orientation and like spirit games, but I think there's more that we can do as ASB to further reach out to them. So I think I'm gonna take your advice and just go back to North and maybe brainstorm with the rest of the board and see what we can do to further welcome them. So yes, thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. It's great. Thank you, Ms. Katera. If nothing else, we can go into adjournment. Is there a motion?
So move.
Seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion is adjourned.